first mediation was on the streets of Rochester in a riot, and I was meeting with some black leaders and public safety officials and fire officials in terms of what are we, and lights on us, what we were going to do to allow firefighters to go in and put out some fires and not be shot at by snipers. It was a street mediation, kind of a thing, and I mean, I look back and I'll say, son of a gun, you know. I mean, I look, you know, and so that was it. But I just was a community organizer. Like, oh my God, it's not going to help anybody if we start popping off firefighters, and that's not right. They're trying to help. Why are we doing this? You know, what forces do we have to make sure this doesn't happen? You know.
So your street smarts, if you will, had you being acceptable to many parties who otherwise might be suspicious.
Yeah. I mean,
and to me,
I live there. You know, I live in the city.
And to me, it's possibly created a certain matter-of-fact style to the work you do as well. You don't seem to beat around the bush very much.
Well, I have to be candid and kind. I think that some people say he can be brutal in his words. You know, I do have my faults, to be sure, but you know, being street smart sometimes meant being incredibly patient and silent. And other times it was nose to nose. I mean, clearly, and just hoping that you call the right shots at the right time. I mean, I remember clearly one time stopping somebody, well, one or three or four people with Molotov cocktails. You know. They were going to throw them someplace. I'm just trying to prevent them from throwing them in this store. And I'm telling them, okay, you know, that's the only place in this community where your mother gets credit. You know, when it's the 25th of the month. Okay, why are you going to do that? Well, what do you think we got to blow up? I said, I'm not going to tell you what to blow up. Just don't blow up that one, and then blow up something else. You know, but there's no way you're going to stop them. You know, and though sometimes I had them running around like, hey, the police keep better run around the corner, and I'd be meeting around the corner. They, oh, they're going to come over. I just had them running around all night. It was funny. They were exhausted. You know, that was great. School board ordered desegregation to occur, and all hell broke loose. And the American Arbitration called up and said that, you know, we've been asked to come in and mediate this. And I said, mediate it? Who asked you? They said, well, a lot of people have asked us. I said, like who? And they said, well, the school board. And I said, so you call yourself neutral responding to the school board? I don't think we need any outsiders here, you know. So what are you doing? And I said, I'm not involved in it. They said, well, you may have to be. And I said, why? And this was Tom Colosi, Vice President of the American Arbitration Association.
In New York still, yes.
Well, he was in D.C.
Okay.
And he said, we talked to some black leaders and said, oh, who could convene the legitimate parties to the table? And I said, well, Lincoln could. And so we called up some Hispanics, and they said, who can they? Well, Lincoln could. So we called the school department, and they said, well, Lincoln could. And I said, yeah, I could get them all. I mean, I was kind of cocky, you know, and I mean, I knew these people, you know, I mean,
from your activist work.
From the activist times, and even if they were in different organizations, we would interact with them and let them know we were going to pull off this stunt, and would appreciate their non-criticism while we do it, and or pulling off an event and making sure that it wasn't going to dilute what they were doing, you know, or we want to pull it off the same day because then it won't get noticed, but theirs will, and that's how we want it. I mean, all kinds of coordination was going on, and so I convened 22 parties at the table, and not people, parties, and I served to administer and basically learning mediation through that on the issues of basically public safety and public education, and we got a big settlement on that.
When did the international work get going? What are the key projects, the most for you, the most meaningful projects you've been involved in? What's the work you're doing now?
Well, I'd have to admit that I just never really intended to go in the international. I just never did. Like most Americans, sure be nice if I got to England or something someday, or you know maybe Japan. But I mean, there was no real big interest in it. You know, we're parochial in Boston. I mean, why do you have to go anywhere else? You know, and but I, you know, a mediator does not sacrifice, hopefully, her or his principles and values and their idea of social justice and stuff, and because I really believed, that in the work I did that we were helping in the contradiction between rapid social change and orderly social change, that through mediation, collaborative planning, cooperative problem solving, that rapid social change and orderly social change could come together. They didn't have to be paradoxical. We're working with countries that either our nation has taken kind of an opposite viewpoint to, or just has dismissed as not being important. And in doing so, we were not working against the interest of the security of our own nation, because I won't do that. So we started negotiating with Cuba. 18 months to go down to Cuba. And it's, well, you could work, maybe do a lecture at the university. I don't want to do that. And I said, I want to work with the foreign ministry. I know that your foreign ministry has absolutely no courses in international negotiations. None. Zero, zip, like that. And we brought John McDonnell in for the final, Ambassador McDonnell, for the late ambassador, talked to ambassador, for the final negotiation. We brought him in on it, and we delivered it. And we went down there, and they were going to try to say that we wanted to say we don't go to a place for 3 days. We go to the place for 3 or 5 years. That's where we go. Right? So they're going to try us for 3 days with an option to renew or something like that. That's a stupid compromise, And we get down. We go through the first hour and a half, and we've got the faculty there and trained diplomats and some graduate students and very good group. And Oscar Garcia. He's a doctor. He set up the whole medical program there. He went to school with Fidel Castro. He did so well, they made him ambassador for 8 years to Spain. He comes back to retire. Fidel says, no, you must, head up this institute in the foreign affairs thing. And so fine. The guy never calls me Bill. We became a dear friend. I'm always Lincoln, right? So we're working our guts off training this way, all right? Really, we're responsive, good point. How would it be different in Cuba? Excellent, fine. They're talking about, America, we're not responding. I'm saying, hey, not part of the deal. So it's great. They take a break. The rector of it, Dr. Garcia, says, Lincoln, I want to see you. Oh, God, jeez. And bring your staff. I said, oh, God. What did we do wrong? How could we blow this in an hour and a half, all right? He brings in his he says, close the door. He said, close the door. He said, okay, fine. When are we going to have the next session? And he was already convinced after an hour and a half that this was something, it was dynamic, it was substantive, it was applicable on it, and we just felt great, which removed a lot of tension. We weren't showing or proving anything. So we did this numerous times, developed very, very substantive curriculum. Was licensed by the Treasury Department for it to do that. And so now we're in Afghanistan, and we're working with 8 warlords who want to see something different, different than what other warlords. They think they need a national army, they need a national unity, they ought to give up the militia, but it's got to be worked out on how to do that. And they're not against Karzai, and we're working also be working with with the foreign ministry, and this is important, to help them to develop some of their courses to reinstitute their Center for Diplomatic Studies. And we're working at the university in terms of, okay, how are we going to have specialized courses for the education university to be able to include this stuff in the curriculum for those who study to be teachers, classroom management, whatever.
All of this in Afghanistan.
All that's in Afghanistan. Notice the 2 points of entry over again and again. We go through universities or foreign ministries. Always happens. That's the easiest, the quickest way for us to do it. If I got plunked in Libya or Iran, I would probably either, let's see, should I go to the university or will I go to the foreign ministry? Because that's my point of entry. It always has been.
Interesting formula for success.
Well, it wasn't a formula. It was just like it happened, and I just see, my God, it seems to be the easiest way.
There's a certain street smart evangelical quality to the work you do.
Well, it's funny. evangelical is, I know it's a positive word, but it's not in my vocabulary and not in my practice, but there certainly has to be a spirit of enthusiasm and excitement about it. And you know, sometimes, and you know, because we really believe people are only going to stay at the table as long as they're either making progress or they're not making progress, but they still have the hope of progress. They're just going to, all I have to do is keep doing it, you know, otherwise. You
But
know.
also commitment. I wonder if that's one of the things they're perceiving from you.
Well, it's commitment, but they also accept the responsibility because they say, Bill, what, do you think this will settle? And they hate this answer. And I said, will it or won't? What do you think? I said, it will or won't. A lot of it's up to you.
And so you're reflecting responsibility back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember, it's not about me. You know, and it is. I go in the other room, I bang my head, what can I do? You know, I mean, you know, what have I not tried? You know, you're probably trying everything but it's all the same way. Do something different, you know. I do not look at the mediator as neutral at all. I mean, I just like, in our country, none of us can be neutral about anything. But we do have a process that's neutral. And so our job as a mediator is to be a facilitator and a steward of the process. Protect the impartiality and the effectiveness of the process on it.
Part of the reason for your success is you're not just going in there for day 2 or 3 and trying to resolve a dispute.
Oh, no,
you're
no.
creating capacity to have a dialogue.
Oh, they asked me, like, you know, what would I suggest in terms of a strategy? It's not going to give you a strategy. I mean, you're getting trained so you can figure out what is the best strategy, including the consequence of your actions or your non-actions. All right, you know. Well, what do you think their counter-proposals were? I'm saying, don't think of counter-proposals ever. Think of counter-arguments. That's the key. Forget the proposals. Think of counter-arguments. Think of the merits of your case, you know, da-da-da. Ask the question to yourself, would you, if you were sitting on the other table, would you accept your own proposal? Some of them probably not. They're pretty wild. You know, and they laughed and like, yeah, you're right, you know, da-da-da. And I'm saying that the thing is to get a settlement, right? You know, this is not a game. And so I would not help them either side in any way, trusting and believing that I am equipping with you the tools now to go out and do it together.
In addition to training of participants in negotiation and problem solving, you were one of the earliest trainers in terms of mediation skills also.
Yeah, and again, we made it very clear we wouldn't train anybody in mediation unless they could evidence that they went through a course in negotiation. It didn't have to be ours, but they had to go. They didn't, then they had to go through our negotiations course and then do the mediation. Again, on the belief. How are you going to mediate if you don't understand the dynamics of both conflict and in terms of conflict resolution, et cetera, et cetera? How are you going to do that? And then it was in I must have been, I'm guessing now, around 1982 or something like that, that then Spider had a conference, and I believe it was in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh, and I was on the program with a well-known arbitrator, Marsha Greenbaum, and the whole issue was certification. And I was really proposing certification, that if we don't begin to regulate ourselves, the government's going to step in and do it. Somebody's going to do it. And right now, everybody's saying, oh, the shingle, I'm a mediator. I said, this is next to consumer fraud. It really is. And AAA was the opposing side, and they said, no, there is a certification process called the parties. They choose a mediator, and they give the stamp of approval. And I said, well, I don't think that's good enough. And I know the reason why they took that position, because they had like 64,000 panel members, and everyone paying dues, and if you're going to take training and certification, then you want to be used on that. So I mean, I understand that. And they're a good organization. I have a lot of praise for them. So I said, fine, you know, you're not going to do it, we'll do it. And we made people go through a very, well, my little organization. We went through 4 days of really intense negotiations training. People who had negotiated all their life said, God, I never knew I was doing this, but this is what I'm doing, and now I have a structure for it. That's not, well, it's prescriptive, but it's not formulaic, you know. And And then we'd have the mediation, and we had all these steps too, and alternatives on it. And then we gave them and they hated this. They would rather have done it in class. We gave them a 50-question essay exam, open book. Use any book you want. Take it home. Get it back in 90 days. People were complaining, this takes longer to do than the darn course. But there was a condition. You had to focus the entire exam either on your vocational, professional responsibilities or your avocational interests. You want to be a free agent? That's your dream? Fine, then focus the whole exam on that. Believing, again, that you would believe your own words a lot more than ours and make it apply, you know. And then other people started doing some certification, and they were able to require, you know, internships and things of that nature. And as more and more got, we just kind of slipped and said, fine, we don't need to do this anymore. It's being done on it. So, but we feel that we were pushing a professional standard of competency, and that's what we want, a professional standard of competency that was not exclusive, that was not elitist, that people even without a college education could do it. They may have different cases, but they could do it, and they're a resource, and they should be identified, and they should be used.